Today, President Trump's SEC nominee Paul Atkins testifies on Capitol Hill. The House's version of stablecoin legislation goes live after weeks of input. And one of the bill's co-sponsors, Congressman Sam Liccardo, gives some insight on what was accomplished at yesterday's DC Blockchain Summit. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Brandon Gomez. Major cryptocurrencies trading pretty flat as of noon Eastern, with Bitcoin inching closer to the $87,000 level and Ether dropping slightly to $2,000. Solana, however, falling by more than 1% to just under $138. And taking a look at a crypto-focused stock, Bitcoin miner Core Scientific shares rising by 3% as of noon Eastern. That's after briefly soaring more than 13% this morning, following news that NVIDIA is aiming to anchor the IPO price of Core Scientific's AI partner, CoreWeave, a cloud provider. A person familiar with the matter told CNBC that the price is expected to be reduced to $40 after the company initially filed the offering at $47 to $55 per share. CoreWeave did not immediately respond to CNBC's request for comment. Okay, let's talk about the top stories for today. President Trump's SEC nominee Paul Atkins is testifying before the Senate Banking Committee today. In his opening statement, Atkins noted that since 2017, he's led industry efforts to develop best practices for digital assets and has seen how ambiguous and non-existent regulations for crypto create uncertainty in the market and inhibit innovation. He also said it would be his top priority to provide a regulatory foundation for digital assets, and that he will work with commissioners and Congress to make that happen. Fortune reports that Atkins owns up to $6 million in crypto-related assets, and that up until February, he owned between $250,000 to $500,000 of call options in the BlackRock-backed tokenization firm Securitize. He also reportedly held the same amount in equity in crypto custodian Anchorage Digital, along with a stake in Off the Chain Capital, a fund that invests in digital assets and blockchain projects, worth between $1 and $5 million. In his ethics disclosure, Atkins said he resigned from his position with Securitize in February and would divest his stock options in the company shortly after his potential confirmation. He also said he resigned from his position with the Digital Chamber, a blockchain advocacy group, as well as the Chamber's Token Alliance. We reached out to Potomac Global Partners, the financial services consultancy firm where Atkins currently serves as chief executive, for comment, but did not hear back right away. Next, the House version of stablecoin legislation was released publicly yesterday. The Stablecoin Transparency and Accountability for a Better Ledger Economy, or the STABLE Act, was introduced by Republican Representative French Hill, chair of the House Financial Services Committee, and Brian Steele, who heads the Crypto and AI Subcommittee. The bill aims to establish a better framework for the issuance and operation of dollar-denominated payment stablecoins in the U.S. In a statement, Steele said the STABLE Act will help the U.S. secure the future of financial payments and continued dominance of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. He noted that the bill is the result of extensive collaboration with committee members, stakeholders, and the administration over the past few weeks. The initial draft of the bill was introduced in February, and this updated version from the House comes after the Senate Banking Committee advanced its own version of stablecoin legislation called the Genius Act earlier this month. In a video address at the Digital Asset Summit in New York City last week, President Trump reiterated support for stablecoin legislation to pass through Congress, saying it will help expand the dollar's dominance. Also yesterday, House Majority Whip Tom Emmer reintroduced his Securities Clarity Act, which aims to provide clear guidelines for digital assets. All right, sticking with the flurry of crypto headlines from Washington for our main story, the DC Blockchain Summit took place yesterday, and California Representative Sam Liccardo was there. Crypto World's Tanea McKeel spoke with the Democratic representative about what was accomplished and what he would like to see on Capitol Hill as it relates to digital assets. He also discusses the legislation he proposed last month that takes aim at President Trump's meme coin.
So let's talk about this event. What happened at Blockchain Summit? It seemed pretty bipartisan, maybe more Democrats than we've seen in the past. Crypto overall feels more political than ever, but it is more bipartisan than ever, I think. What were your biggest takeaways from the event?
Well, we are at a moment where I think more Democrats are embracing fintech and the inevitability of newer and better technologies in moving money. And so I think there's no question there's a wider embrace. I think it's important, though, that we come in with a very sensible set of safeguards to protect a lot of retail users and investors. And I think that's where a lot of us could be focused.
One big area of focus is stablecoin legislation. There are two bills moving through Congress at the same time. They're similar but different. You have the Genius Act in the Senate and the Stable Act, of which you are a co-sponsor. We're expecting a markup of the Stable Act this coming Wednesday. What's the response been so far on this bill, and are you expecting any major changes to the bill next week? And the third part, what are some concerns that you expect to be addressed?
Well, I think we'll see a lot of amendments coming, and hopefully several of those amendments will be adopted. In fact, although I'm a co-sponsor, I've informed the bill sponsor and the chair that I will also be bringing amendments. I think there are things we could strengthen around anti-money laundering protections, for example, around ensuring offshore regulation that will be sufficiently robust as it is within this country to protect American investors and users. So I think many of those kinds of changes are likely to be proposed and hopefully will be embraced.
And then, as I just mentioned, there's also the Genius Act, which was just marked up and passed in the Senate. Would you vote for the Genius Act if it came to the House in its current form?
I would. Now, that's not to say that there aren't deficiencies and improvements that could be made. We're in a place now where there are essentially no federal statutes that govern this entity we call stablecoin. It's kind of regulation by litigation. That's never a good approach. And so I'm in the school of thought that something is better than nothing. And certainly we can make that something better. And my intent is by co-sponsoring this legislation that I can essentially, remodel the house in a much more effective way inside the house than I can when I'm outside it throwing rocks at it.
What are some of the key differences between the two bills, and what, if you could just bullet point them, what would you say are your top priorities for what the best stablecoin legislation should look like?
Well, I alluded to a couple. For example, I think the money laundering provisions of the Senate bill are better than what we have in this House version, and I'm hoping we can beef these up. And also setting clear criteria for the Treasury's approval or certification of offshore regulators. I think that's important for Congress to weigh in there. And since, by the way, we have a U.S. president who's decided not only to issue his own meme coin, but now to get in the stablecoin business, I think they ought to frankly adopt the bill I've already introduced to prohibit federal officials from getting in the business of sponsoring or issuing digital currency or commodities or securities or any other kind of financial asset. We shouldn't be in that business. It leads to all kinds of corruption and frankly, a lot of pretty awful outcomes with regard to foreign influence.
I actually do want to get back to the meme bill in just a second, but about timeline, we're kind of in a funny place in the market where, if you look at pricing, it's not very inspiring, but there are all of these regulatory tailwinds that's keeping the industry very positive. And we're kind of coming off of this euphoria of all of these announcements that we got that were very pro-crypto just in this first quarter. Can you give me a little bit of a reality check on when you think realistically we can expect to see stablecoin legislation, whether it's one of the bills or the other that has been proposed, actually be passed and implemented?
Well, you're talking to a guy who's been here about 12 weeks, so I'm not going to be the expert. But the fact that we're moving to markup on the stablecoin bill and that something's obviously emerged from the Senate, I think that's very promising. And I think we've got bipartisan support in both the Senate and the House. That is also a very good sign. So all lights seem to be green for this to move forward. I think, the market structure bill, which should follow within a couple weeks or so on the House side, I know that's going to be more complex and probably some more give and take. But I'm hopeful we'll be able to get something over the goal line this year.
And so going back to memes, you just mentioned the Meme Act, which you introduced, targeted at preventing members of Congress and those in the executive branch from issuing, sponsoring, or endorsing investment products like stocks or crypto. This came in the wake of President Trump's meme coin launch. What is the progress on this bill, and have you seen support from colleagues on it?
A couple dozen of my colleagues have co-sponsored the bill. As you might expect, all of those co-sponsors are Democratic. Now, this is something in any other administration at any other moment we would have broad bipartisan support for this. So this is what fits in that broad category of duh. And obviously, any responsible legislature would say we need to prohibit this kind of conduct because we know it's corrupting no matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Nonetheless, we have a cult of Trump right now that has really cast a broad shadow over this Congress. And I am hopeful that as we see Trump's approval ratings continue to drop, we might see backbones among some of my Republican colleagues stiffen.
Well, meme coins were a hot topic again this quarter. Stable coins are obviously having a moment. This is a crypto show. Looking at the industry broadly, what are some other protections that you are focused on or that you think should be prioritized? And are you talking with the crypto community about potential next steps?
Yeah, I'm having conversations all the time. Obviously, I'm from Silicon Valley, so we have a lot of folks out there who are engaged in this industry in one place or another. And look, I am concerned. I think in the long run, we're going to need to have extraterritorial enforcement in place to protect the many millions of Americans who are investing and are doing so maybe not with all the information that sophisticated investors would have. And so I think we have to be very determined to ensure that we have safeguards in place. And ultimately, where I'd like to get to is creating something of a sandbox. I know that's been aspirational for many folks in this industry, where we can provide greater transparency for those many retail investors who I meet every day who are talking about what they're doing in crypto.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today. We're back again tomorrow. We will see you then.